Hello, everyone. Welcome to International Online Theatre Festival 2023 panel on sustainability of live theatre in Africa. This panel is co-organized with the African Theatre Magazine and its founder and content manager, Aidah Nalubowa, will be hosting the panel. Together with her are Makhaola, Ndebele, Lloyd Nikayadzno, and Rosette Nteyafas. Welcome, and I look forward to this panel.
Thank you.
All right, so hi, my name is Aidah Nalubowa. I am the founder and content manager for the African Theatre Magazine. We are an online platform that documents and celebrates African theatre and African theatre practices on the continent and in the diaspora. So I'm happy that you are here with us today. I have a few questions for us to, have this discussion. We have Rosette Nteyafas, who is a producer of festivals, arts events, and training programs in Uganda, and she has 11 years of experience doing that work. We have Makhaola Ndebele, who is an actor, independent director, and creative consultant, and is also a research associate at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. And we have Lloyd Nikayadzno, who is the founder and the director of the Zimbabwe Theatre Academy and Mitambo Theatre Festival. Lloyd is also a Theatre Communications Group Global Connectivity Task Force member and a drama coach at the Dominican Convent High School, and that is in Zimbabwe. So thank you so much for joining us today. As we discuss sustainability of live theatre on the African continent, the first question I want to ask you, and I'd like for us to go around and answer this, is your idea, or how do you characterize your theatre audiences in your country? What kind of person do you have in mind as a theatre audience, or who do you imagine is coming to your shows? We can start with Makhaola.
Okay, thank you for that. Our audiences, it's been interesting. So at the moment, at the present time, mainly it's young African people. So let me give a bit of a history quickly. South Africa gained independence in '94. Usually it was mostly European audiences, white people for mid-ages, your 30s and up. And we've watched those audiences kind of get older and older. And then what's happened now is that there's a new crop of African audience members who are fluid in terms of financially fluid. And that's the main audience that are coming to the established theaters. And then you have your developmental work or your community work, where it's still young people. So it's mainly young people from your teens to mid-30s that come to the theaters on present day. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I might have a follow-up question there, but I'll let Lloyd and Rosette share their perspective with us.
Thank you so much. I think I share the same sentiments with Mr. Ndebele, in a sense that if you look at our setting and our background, we are playing with the issue of colonization that was very ripe in our societies, where the colonizers established their form of spaces that people would go to, which then constituted the bigger part of theater spaces around the country, specifically in Zimbabwe. So speaking from a general point of view, they were separated, the white minority and the black majority. And in our communities, in the ghettos, you get community halls which are not really refurbished to accommodate theater, and then the uptown one where the white community used to hang around. But now, in terms of the audiences, we're fairly this gap. It depends also on where you are. If you're in the major cities, then you also have got the Black community movement, and also the white theaters that also get a lot of now mixed audiences. So I think it depends where you're coming from. If it's also from the lenses of community development or theater for development, then it's theater going to the audiences, young women, youth and old people. So I think it just depends from which lenses you're looking it from, but I think it's catering for everyone who is interested in theater and wants to have a taste of theater. Yeah.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you. Rosette, how would you characterize the audiences that have maybe been to the festivals and other arts events, theater events that you've produced?
In the theater festival that was specifically produced, the Kampala International Theater Festival, we've had urban middle class come and university students and academicians come for the festival. It's also open to both the international and local. So the performances we have are not just within Uganda, but we have different theater practitioners from East Africa, and other parts of the world come in. Because of that, we also have the expatriates in Uganda come for the theater. But theater in Uganda is divided. There's also theater downtown. So it also depends where you're taking the theater. If you take theater to the National Theater, you will not get the audiences downtown. If you take it to spaces where downtown people are attend, like Bad Valley Pride Theater, you will get people of who are downtown and low class, and there's specifically a type of theater that they're interested in. So most of our audiences are between the ages of 18 and 45 years. And predominantly we have in the arts circle a movement of people, the youth who are interested in exploring theater through comedy, theater through poetry. So that's also a new audience we're having. And in the past, we haven't engaged so much in community theater, but that is something that we are moving towards, to be able to engage and include an audience that we've not been having. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So what I'm hearing from the three of you is that the audience is quite broad. Like, we can't just pick out like a specific kind of person and be like, okay, that is the kind of person that's coming to our theater spaces. But because it's broad, for example, if you have university students, if you have the urban middle class, I like this idea of the uptown and downtown, because I think that those, in my view, the people from downtown and uptown are interested in a different kind of theater. So I'm hoping we can speak to that. But because this audience is so broad, I wonder, how are you marketing to them? How are you reaching them to, market your shows and tell them, hey, we have a show happening? What avenues are you using to market to this broad audience? And perhaps you can speak to what you used to do pre-pandemic and how the pandemic changed the ways that you're marketing your shows.
Okay, let me give it a go. So I was artistic director at the Joburg City Theatres, which was interesting because Joburg is the only municipality in South Africa that actually owns theatres. So it's comprised of 3 theatres in different parts of Johannesburg. So the one was a Soweto theatre, which was based in Soweto, and then another one which was based in a former Afrikaans neighborhood called Rudeport, and then there's a one in central Johannesburg. And what I'm getting at is that depending on at the Joburg Theatre, you had mainly your suburban audiences. So they would come to pantomimes, they would come to opera, and they would come to ballet, and they will come to projects that came from Europe and came from the US. So if it's an international production, maybe it's August Wilson's Fences, that type of stuff, then, or The Color Purple, then you find that your audiences are your suburban people, black and white. And then you have local productions that are made locally. And then there are those that are made locally but have been abroad. So that attracts a specific type of audience as well, more international inclined audience, you know, who have internet and who are aware of what's happening outside. Then you have, then we had what we could, your local stuff, where there it is a younger audience. So just people who are starting to work and starting to be employed and can think maybe they're not into clubs and all of that, and they want to do something different, and they're aware that art is a thing that they want to do. So there was that. And then in Soweto, we tried very hard to get the local community to come to the theater. But interestingly enough, because it was in the township, they want to go outside to go. The people who watch theater, they don't want to watch it there. They want to go to town to watch it. And then so it's hard to convince them that no, you can come here. And then when you come here at the prices that are from town, they want you to lower the prices. So it's a very difficult balancing act that we had to do there. And then the Afrikaners and the British, they have a locked-in audience. So when they are say they are people, when Afrikaner artists come and they know them, they bring their crowd. So from there, and they come as families. So you know, there'll be a family will come, and they come as couples as well. So it's those are the different ways of doing. COVID was a very destabilizing thing because we weren't allowed to have 50 people gather so they closed, our country closed the doors. And then when they opened it a little bit, you couldn't have more than 50 people in an audience. And that makes it unsustainable because tickets from 50 people per night does not even begin to cover your costs. So it was hard, we took a knock. But because it was a municipally funded thing, we still were able to put on productions. Then we put them online. And then in there, online has its own politics as well, because very few people that you're targeting are able to have the data or the Wi-Fi connectivity to engage in the work online. And also yes, and to have it on for the duration of a play or a musical event. Usually it's 5-10 minutes, you know, people are able to do that and then log off. But so those were some of the challenges. Post-COVID, again, people are coming back. And it's interesting now that they're coming back, but now prices are everything is going up. So it's a constant challenge to do it. And I have the idea that actually, if you think about it, theater is a premium product because you have live people every day, and it's costly. Where you have when something is human intensive, it's cost heavy. So it's how do you, but at the same time we want a mass audiences to come and watch. So it's a balancing thing, and it's how do you make it such that it has mass appeal, and how do you make it sustainable financially? Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. You've touched on a few things that I hope we can revisit before the end of this 1 hour. But I'd like to hear from Lloyd and Rosette. I can say the question again if you want me to, or if you just want to respond to what Makhaola has said.
Yeah, I think, pre-COVID, it was the traditional approach of marketing, depending on how big the theater is. I'm happy that Rosette visited Zimbabwe for Mitambo International Theatre Festival just after COVID. And before that, where I am, there are two theaters. One is like a 56-seater and the other one is like 460-seater. And just like the divide that was there, or the artificial that is there between racial divide, which is not directly said, but as Mr. Ndebele rightly put it, those that are internationally inclined and people will know you. So I think the traditional forms of word of mouth, hi colleagues, I'm putting up a show, can you call your friends and all that stuff. Yes, internet, you do a poster, but I think the issue of online posters have been mostly intensified because of COVID. I still remember doing our Mitambo International Theatre Festival online in 2020, yes. And then it was quite amazing because only within a space of 1 month, we'd reached like 100-something thousand people engaging in our products. But come 2021, I think there was the online fatigue. We thought, we're going to hit the mark again with online activities, but everyone wanted to go back again to physical spaces of theater. Then it also went back. So I think it's about who you know, your network, and also reaching out. So yes, I still remember at the academy when we were doing our student show, in terms of the demographics of who comes to the show, we had one person, foreigners, international, is not a tourist because they also have got residents in here. They just popped in because they saw our poster online. And then after that, actually, we ended up producing some of their stories. So now is the balance between both worlds. Like for our festival, we're now saying we do it in a hybrid format. Why? Because COVID really presented some advantages, and also, even though it has got disadvantages, like now, people, their concentration span online is very limited. And also what you post in the content about the show, do you write everything, or you just write the teasers that everyone, if they're interested, then they probably come. So everything has its own merits and demerits. Yeah.
Aidah, you are muted.
You would think after years of doing this, I would know. Yeah, thank you so much. The thing that you mentioned, which rightly I agree with, is the one thing for me, the one thing that I think that came out of COVID is the idea that we know we can do things online just as much as we can do them in person, and just being able to take advantage of that. Rosette, do you want to jump in?
Yes, please. To follow what my colleagues have said, Before COVID, we've been using the traditional forms of marketing, and one of them being having press releases, inviting the media over and informing them of what we are going to do, the program lineup, and using specifically selecting media personalities who will spread the word through the arts, because it was important for us to get specific journalists. Not all journalists will spread the word. So having a press conference before the event and informing the public of what we are planning to do, and then having our artists as guests in talk shows, radio talk shows, and specific talk shows on TV. And then also one of the other ways we market the festival is backing on that. For instance, if you have a celebrity actor, a celebrity director who has a following, so using them as influencers to invite their crowd, and also to bring on people we have not had before. And then also backing on like networks. For instance, if you're working with the National Theatre or you're working with Alliance Francaise, you work together to supplement and diversify your audiences. So use the networks of your partner to advertise. They also use your networks to advertise the festival. So doing it collaboratively so that you're not only one person doing it. And during the time of COVID, we weren't allowed to meet in public. So it was harder to be able to do certain things, because in Uganda, the arts was the last industry that was opened up. And then we also had the limitation of only having 50 and a particular setting for the audiences. So for that, we had to rely heavily on social media, using our Facebook accounts, Twitter, Instagram, and newsletters to inform people, but also word of mouth. During COVID, we had a production. As an organization, we have 4 flagship programs. One of them is the International Theatre Festival, and the other one is an annual production. So each year we have a production that we produce. And then at the end of the year, we also have the International Festival. So during that year of 2021, we had a production by Doreen Bayingana of Tropical Fish. So Doreen Bayingana is known in the literal world. So that was an advantage for us to be able to tap into her networks, and also the actors and actresses who were part of her production were able to influence the audiences to come on board. And then throughout the year, we keep engaging the people who have been like building a community, not forgetting the people you've started with, inviting them specifically for special events. For instance, the cocktail. If you have a reading, you invite specific people. So you keep people engaged in your activities, and then you have specific activities that run throughout the year, so that by the time you have a festival, you're not just coming at the end of the festival, end of the year to introduce yourself, but you have activities that are speaking about what you're doing. And then also the programs we have in terms of capacity building, reaching out to young emerging artists and going out in the universities and working with them helps us spread through word of mouth and experience. So the young audiences that come within us, who are part of our programs, actually become the ambassadors on behalf of the company to speak about what it has, the programs have done for them and how they've experienced the theatre festival. And then through online, we've also tried to explore using influencers to speak about their experience, and specifically getting people who will, within the Ugandan setting, who will be interested in them, but speaking about the festival. Yeah.
Yeah, and also maybe just add on one thing that came out from Rosette when she was speaking. I think, if we're talking about accounts is accounts everywhere around the world. If it's theater marketing, probably it's theater around the world. But I think one of the things that enlightened me was that it also is about context. When you're speaking about journalists, Zimbabwe is a population of around 14, 15 million. And only in Harare, we're about I don't know, is it 5 million? I'm not so sure, or that. So the same journalists who came to a place, sometimes they get, it's different from Mr. Ndebele in Joburg, that you've got thousands and millions of people in there in different spaces. So some journalists would get tired, like Lloyd, I'm tired of reviewing a place, man. Every month it's you, every month it's the academy. So it becomes a challenge now, because unless if they're speaking from the whole country, but like Lloyd, you did the festival, okay, you're doing the academy, you're doing an outreach. I'm tired of writing about theater because if you look at South Africa and Nigeria, these are different contexts because of the population. Probably, I think we can borrow or can learn or we can share best practices from there. So it's just a pointer that I thought I should pop in there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to acknowledge Alexander Nderitu, who just joined us from Kenya. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Sorry, but I got the timing a bit wrong. I thought we were starting at 12 midday, which is here Nairobi time, which is still about 45 minutes away. So sorry for the tardiness, but I'm glad, and I was able to get a bit of what the other panelists spoke about earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good to have you. So I'm one of my next question to all of us, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot. So if you want to pass on the question, that's fine. Or if you just want to answer part of it, that's also okay. But listening to you have talked about, online marketing. You've mentioned influencers, you've mentioned social media, you've mentioned people that maybe are part of the production that have a huge following that you tap into. You've mentioned using e-posters, and two things that I would like us to address. Well, one of them is that when we move away from the theater, because theater is special, it's supposed to be immersive and in person, and people come into the same space to engage with the story. When we move from that space and enter into an online space, we're going into a market that has all other forms of entertainment, that has music, that has film, that has TV. And so we're fighting for that audience as well. And I guess my question is, in light of that, how do you think, first of all, how do you think you're doing, and are you doing something special to, convince someone who was maybe going to watch a show on Netflix or a TV show or something to, steal them away and interest them in your production? And then another thing that, and I think this speaks to putting shows online, like Makhaola said, recording shows and putting them online. Acknowledging, I appreciate that you acknowledge that, most people don't have the internet data to watch a whole 1 hour production or 1 hour and a half production. People don't have that. And then also there's the issue of concentration. The life we live in is short videos, and then people move on to the next one. So how are we as theater people, in light of all that information, how are we still getting people interested in our work? What are we doing? Is there anything new that you're doing? And have you experienced what are some of the wins that you have, seen in your work? And I know that was a lot, so you don't have to address everything.
Perhaps I could also say something. Perhaps I can say something about that.
Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, because in Kenya, which by the way is one of the most technologically advanced African nations. It's us, South Africa, Egypt, and a few, we're like top 5. So we do have a huge internet culture, and things like Instagram and Twitter and so forth. There's a lot of presence there, and we use them for a lot of things. During the lockdown, the COVID-19 lockdowns, there was an explosion of theatrical productions online, and especially using the Instagram platform. Now, and Instagram, like you said, there are a lot of other types of content there, but people are already used to the Instagram lives in particular, and in general, and people discuss all kinds of different topics. So it was a good idea for thespians to also put the productions there, because the audience is already familiar with this type of thing. Of course, when the show is online, it does lose a certain personal touch. But in the larger context, it's still theater, especially when it's still live. Because when it's recorded, I personally have a problem when the shows are pre-recorded, because isn't that just like like in a TV show? It may as well be Netflix. Because with theater, there's that immediacy, and you can actually be feeding off the audience's energy as well. Like if you see something funny, they laugh immediately. But if the show is pre-recorded and broadcast at another time, I'm not sure if that's still a theater. And also, another thing also observed. Oh, by the way, in Kenya, one of the groups that did that were called Shots from Africa, and theirs were brief, like you suggested. About concerning length. Theirs were brief. That's what they're called, Shots from Africa, and they were live and rehearsed, and everything. So they're taken seriously, costumes and that kind of thing. But even for longer productions, it would still work. Like I said, generally with internet lives, it's people who do a lot of shows live, scheduled with e-posters and everything, and do discuss anything, different topics, whether it's politics, social issues, and so forth. And they do that for a long time. It's probably on TikTok where you need to be, where people got a very short attention span. One more thing I would like to say is that one advantage of a show that is online is it allows for cross-border collaboration. So, and this was done again during COVID by a group associated with musician and entertainer and thespian, Eric Wenaina. They deliberately set out to do something international with some collaborators from Russia, Europe, and the US, and they're holding shows online. On Instagram in particular, no, and YouTube actually. There's on YouTube live, and there are cross-border collaborations. The one thing we did a performing arts conference in Kenya shortly after the lockdowns, and one thing that I spoke about was that I noticed that musicians did, because musicians also went online, obviously, during the lockdowns, or the worst of them. And there's something that musicians and DJs, there's something they did that thespians, Kenyan thespians at least, did not do, but which they probably could, and which is that they had a tip jar. So I mean, if it's a DJ, they would DJ for free. They would announce and they do the performance because all the clubs had been shut down. So they put out a show on Instagram, DJ do live mixes online. And at the bottom at the corner of the screen, there was with a mobile phone payment method called M-Pesa, and it's very quick. In fact, it's one of the things Kenyans are most proud of, because it was innovated in this country. It's very efficient, and so DJs did that. They had a tip jar, so the show is free. But if you want to send something to the DJ, you can do that. Now, Kenyan thespians who put their shows online, all the ones I'm aware of, all of them were free. We're just trying to keep they were able to handle that sales aspect. Yeah, so that's my contribution for now.
Nice.
Thank you, Alex. You did mention something that I find quite interesting that I don't think we had considered as we move, we try to take advantage of the, the online spaces. And that's, reconciling ticket sales and how the artists get the money back. Because I think we think, oh, people don't have internet connection to watch this, but if they do, how do we then as artists get paid for that? But yeah, I hope we have time to actually talk about that. But I'd like to hear from the rest of us about, harnessing those online spaces, some challenges, and all that.
I like what Alex talked about when he's talking about the live. And I think, as he was talking about went on in my mind, because one of the biggest challenges is exactly the recorded work wasn't gaining traction for us from our point of view. And the reason is that I think theater's main selling point is that interpersonal audience performer relationship and the immediacy of it. So yes, and I think well, in a South African context, there are many, not many, but there are few on ticketing platforms that are springing up. It used to be controlled by one or two, but now there's more that enable you to buy and then also create your own event and then ticket it through them. So that's what's happening. And as Alex was speaking, I kind of see a way that we can capitalize on this.
Yeah, and I think some of the challenges, also looking at marketing and going out there, is also probably also speak in terms of trying to get the context to say, a state-funded theater or municipal, supported, they've got a budget for that. Ideally, Rosette, when you're talking about production, we're assuming that it has got an annual budget to put up a show. But most of the practitioners that are operating, they do not have these budgets for, and thanks to the, e-platforms where people can just design a poster for a very, affordable fee and then circulate it to a lot of people. But also, as my brother, Mr. Ndebele, have just spoken about, that we are now living in a world where there's a lot of competition, as Andre say. There's TikTok, there's Facebook. There are people who are just getting their cameras, recording stuff and putting it online, and you can't. There's a blurred line between who are the professionals and who are just making fun out of everything. And because we live out of these things, we also try to really be to be effective. So I think that's one of the challenges that I saw, because when you post it, you've got these experienced actors that, come watch them. And then there's somebody who's so funny, a comedian, or somebody who's been trending through COVID. People are going to go like him more than a theater show. So I'm like, no, but we really do stuff that we learn for, they're like, nah, I think this one is more popular and is more followed. And then I think one of the things that I think is mostly is about the competition. So the new strategies is bridging the gap again and finding the intersection between the old models where we used to go to these spaces, now going probably into schools. I still remember one of our shows that we're touring just after COVID. We started inviting schools, specifically we have got a showcase, come buy tickets for us and all that. And also, if you see the trend after COVID, I don't know another context, but in Zimbabwe, people didn't just run to the theaters. They're still skeptical. There's a culture that have been now, provided for them, that I can do everything while I'm sitting at home. So why should I really, what's so special for me to go to the theater now? I think that's also our challenge and opportunity to say how and what new ways can we probably put out there for people to start now coming back again fully to the theater. Yes, music people can, concerts people can, but theater now, I'm like, I'm going for 1 hour, 30 minutes to, so this is some of the challenges that we're also still battling with, to say how do we retain the audiences that we have, and also probably new ones that haven't never been to the theater or really been interested in the theater before. Yeah.
if I could, I would like to respond to Lloyd before I forget. It's very interesting that you say that after COVID, audiences did not rush back into the theaters. In Kenya, it was the exact opposite. The shows immediately following COVID did very well. There are shows, for example, like I Will Marry When I Want, which was done at the National Theatre, which is a lot of seats to fill, did so well. They had a revival, always sold out. In fact, the goodwill from audiences continues to this moment. The audience, the theater, live theater, is doing very well at the moment. It was, after COVID, I mean, there was that hunger. You missed out on life. So perhaps, well, I'm not sure, but perhaps the online activity that continued, the online theater and so forth that continued during COVID, it kept audiences, it kept theater at the top of audiences' minds, because we didn't lose the audience. I'm actually surprised about what happened in Zimbabwe. Maybe the scenes of our scenes are the theater scenes are different. Perhaps ours is more active generally. We have more people, and in particular the ones that I mentioned were all done in Nairobi, which is the capital city. So we do have that problem where the audience, the theater audiences are mainly concentrated in Nairobi and a bit in Mombasa. In the rural areas, small towns and so forth, oh, it's terrible. You will do a show and get 1 or 2 audience members. We don't have that culture there. But Nairobi is very big, very cosmopolitan. It's like the New York of East Africa. So there are people from all over the world, very sophisticated people, very well-oiled people, moneyed people, and so forth. So maybe it's just a better, a more advanced theater scene. And also, before I forget, Mr. Lloyd, I've always wanted, I'm so happy to see you today, because I would like to ask, does the name Mitambo, because this festival called Mitambo International Theater Festival, what does Mitambo mean?
So Mitambo is so in Shona, the Shona language, you've got 2 main ones, the Shona and Ndebele language. And then from the Shona, Mitambo means plays in Shona.
Plays?
Plays, yeah, like theater plays.
Oh, that, okay. No, I ask because there's a veteran actor and writer and producer in Kenya. His name is Tash Mitambo.
I know. First time we did Mitambo, they wrote to us. I'm like, you're doing
on social media, but he's a very comedic fellow. Most of his shows are comedies, because it was almost as if it was about. In fact, the first time I saw it, that was about him. I was like, oh, you started a theater festival. And it's like, no, it's something else. But so it's good to see you. Have you ever communicated with him?
No, I still remember that call, because when we did Mitambo, and then I think it's somebody from Kenya who wrote and say, when we did our first edition, someone said, Mitambo, this is your festival. And I think we had, and I also know, I don't know if you know Karishma Bangani from Kenya. Also,
yeah. Brilliant lady, yeah. I've been meaning to interview. Yeah, we're in touch a lot.
Yeah, so we are in one cohort together at Georgetown University. But I know people are like, oh, Mitambo is really here also. I'm like, no, it's just for.
And he's in theater as well. Well, it's a good friend of mine. I'll tell him I met you.
We are inviting him because of you.
That's great. He's a veteran.
Thank you.
Rosette, do you have something to say? You don't have to. We can just move on to the next question, but.
Yes, I have something to say to pick on what Lloyd has been sharing about the competition with other mediums online. And as an organization, one of the ways we explored continuity with theater is to venture into radio dramas. And we're able to partner with, as Alex mentioned, Eric Wanaina. Initially in 2019, we invited Eric Wanaina under the Nairobi Music Initiative, and they decided to continue having it, but in form of radio plays. So we're able to do a partnership where we showcased their plays. We're supposed to showcase their audio dramas in 2021, but because of COVID and they needed more time to work on the plays, we had to push it to 2022. So in that process, we also had the tutor who worked with them come to Uganda and tutor our emerging artists. So the reason for that was to venture into a new form and see how to present this during the festival. So in 2022, last year, we were able to have our first audio installation within this festival, and we're continuing to have that capacity building and create avenues for having audio dramas within the festival and on our websites, because we're looking at other ways in which we could produce theater in case there's any shutdown. What are the other forms? So that was one of the ways we were able to come up with something. Yeah.
I have a question for Rosette.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, earlier, I had you mention that at some point, influencers were brought in. I'm curious about whether you found these people to be effective using influencers, and the reason I'm curious is because normally these influencers, these people with a large social media following, usually in specific areas, different influencers usually have their own demographics. So, someone could be politicians, and one could be youth, and one could be women, that kind of thing. So I'm curious as to which type of influencers you would reach out to for a theater show, because I've never seen that done in Kenya for several reasons. One of them being that normally these people charge a lot. You've got maybe 2 million a following of maybe 2 million people across social media. There's some calculations that they do, and they tell you these are my rates, and usually very expensive. And like I said, for example, the online shows that were done during COVID lockdown, they were not even Kenyan audience, Kenyan thespians were not even able to charge. Next time they might, because they learned some lessons in the course of the madness. But so you're doing a free show, but even if you are doing a paid show, it seems to me that influencers in this country, at least, would mess up the budget. In fact, in our local theater scene, what we'd call influencers in theater would be the star actors and actresses. There are certain people you'd really prefer to work with, and I've seen this. Like, for example, when foreign theater groups or people involved in theater come here, and you get a lot of foreigners here, and they want to do shows, they reach out to the big stars, the people who are known in theater. There are these award-winning actresses and actors and the star producers, and they want to work with those because they feel these people have got the audience. The audience will come to see these people. It's almost like the Hollywood star system. You're more likely to see a show if it has Tom Cruise in it than if it has some guy you've never even heard of. So I am curious. So what kind of influencers did you use? Are there people involved in the arts? And most importantly, did it work?
After you go, Rosette, I can also chip in on that one.
So the type of influencers we have are actually people who are involved in the arts. For instance, I mentioned if you have a star, for instance, you have a production. One of our productions was with Tropical Fish. Tropical Fish is by Doreen Baingana. She's known for her literary works and has won awards. So tagging on the community that she has access to, and also the experience of her transforming her book into a stage play brought on people who are interested in knowing the process. So the influences are not so much about the social media personalities. We've also been thinking about that, but we kind of have to be specific. Why are we bringing, what crowd are following, and what message are they portraying, and also affordability. I think with that, it also comes with what you've said, affordability. So we work within our arts community, and if also within the actors. If we have an actor like we had Esther Tevandika, who was able to bring on a crowd for the production. And even during the theatre festival, we tag on specific actors, specific productions, specific directors to be able to bring on the crowd. We haven't yet tapped into social influencers, but that's something we're looking to. So I hope I've answered your question.
Absolutely.
So you're not really using influencers for the sake of it. You are using the influence that some of the people that you work with have to bring in, their own audiences.
Yes, we're using the people with influence within the arts industry and to bring in audiences to come for our activities.
Okay, thank you. And I think Makhaola had something to say.
Yes, I was going to say on that, what we used to do is that as we're rehearsing, for instance, so first, if you have people, actors who have a following or names in the industry, if they're in a production together, while we're rehearsing the production, we encourage them to comment and to share the process. So as we're rehearsing, they're sharing. Maybe there's a clip we're working on a dance or something. So it starts sharing, and then that the word starts going out. So that's the one aspect. Another big aspect is the opening night of the show, or the opening day of the show. So that should become an event in itself, so an experience. So who do you invite to that event? So that's where, for us, the influencers come in. So if you invite people who have their own followings, and you create that at the opening, they have an opportunity to have photo opportunities as well. So as the influencers themselves, they also want content for their own pages and all of that. So so we have banners for the show, and then after the show, there's a part where people can come out and meet the people who have just performed, and then there's photo opportunities, and that filters out as everyone texts their things, and it filters out into the audience. So the influencers that when we work with them, is not to say how much can we be on your page, but it's to say, come to our event. So we invite you to there, and we take care of you, maybe drinks or whatever that you need. But people then will know so-and-so was at that event, and people want to go to where that so-and-so was at. But all of this, of course, the main thing is that your production after all of that must be wow. So
Yes.
So I always tell people that if somebody comes, takes their girlfriend or their wife or their husband and puts on their shoes and goes out in the rain, drives to your place and watches, that show must be wow. And if it doesn't have that wow factor, it doesn't matter who the influencers are, it doesn't matter what all the other stuff happens. It won't make it. But once you have that wow factor for your show, then when people who watch your show, naturally a person who's seen something great wants to tell somebody else, and they do it through taking pictures. They want to be involved, and they want to share that they were at this event, and you guys are just doing clubs and stuff. We go to theaters. It becomes a thing, and so it becomes a thing that's attractive in itself. So that's how we engage, and people love that. People love to be seen in nice things.
So I want to make a note and hopefully move on from this, but I want to acknowledge that this is a very broad conversation that probably needs a whole section of itself, a whole segment of on its own, because I worry about what that means to, and I like that you spoke about the quality of the production, because I worry that some productions, some people might fall into the trap of hiring someone with a following. So when an actor comes into audition, the first thing you want is that they can actually perform, they can do the part. Yeah. So I worry, and I hope it doesn't happen that people get hired because they can perform a bit, but they're also going to bring numbers to the show. I do hope that does not actually happen, but I worry too. But I just want to make a note on that. So we're almost out of time, but I want to revisit something that some of us mentioned at the beginning, and I made a note of it, of the language. And so I'm going to give everyone 1 minute to speak on how the language of the production affects the audience that you're inviting, how you're marketing the show. For example, I think all of us here in our countries speak English, but there's also other languages, and our audiences speak different languages. So how does the language of the audience or the language of the production, how do those play, or how do those two things, the audience and the production language, intersect, and how are we navigating that? If everyone can just choose 1 minute.
Maybe I can go fast, because earlier I mentioned a very successful show that was called I Will Marry When I Want. Its original title was Gahika Deda, and it was written by Goge wa Thiong'o, who is an internationally known author. In fact, when the show was first done in the 70s, Goge wa Thiong'o was a very old man, and it was banned and he was arrested. So this was this was some kind of a revival after over 40 years, and it did very well. Now the show is mostly it handles themes like colonization and that kind of thing, that era, people struggling for independence, and it's mainly in Kikuyu language. But although there's some parts in English, some parts in Kiswahili, but it's mainly a Kikuyu show, and vernacular theater has been having a huge resurgence, but it's in the major languages like Kikuyu, which was the language of that particular show. There's a huge population. In fact, I'm part of it myself. Then other languages like Doluo and Kamba and so forth. And it's not just in theater, this whole ecosystem, because even on TV, we have vernacular channels, we have vernacular radio, and even in stand-up comedy, we have comedy in vernacular languages. So if the audience is big enough, it can be done. But there's some small languages, that are dying out and will continue to die out. But apart from the two national language, the official language here is English. The national language is Kiswahili. But then the other major languages like Kikuyu, which have about 10 million speakers. So you can still get an audience with that. We even write a bit of books, literature in those languages.
Thank you, Alex. How are you navigating language, Lloyd?
I think for us, I always say local stories with a universal appeal, and also mainly we've been using physical theater to break and cross this divide. So, but also the plays that are text-based, that you just have to either speak in English or decide that we are going for Ndebele or Xhosa or Shona. It depends also in terms of the market. So I think is finding, the dramatic modes of performance that speaks to that particular audience that you're targeting, That's what I would say, because they're only speaking English people, others only Shona, but there's also that blend. So we're still also trying to figure it out. And then some you win, some you don't, some it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, why did you do it in English? You should have done it in Shona. So I'm like, oh, why did you do it in Shona? You know, there's more English. So I think it becomes case to case basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Makhaola?
Yes, I've directed plays in isiZulu, Afrikaans, Setswana, different languages. So and what I've realized, it's become a personal passion of mine, is how do you break the language barrier? And I found that during the audiences that come to the different shows, the core language speakers will connect immediately on a lot of different levels. But if you direct it in such a way that, so I always tell people, anger, jealousy, happy, being excited, it doesn't matter what language, we can all relate to those things. So if you can see what's happening, you get taken away. If the direction is cognizant of what am I seeing? So it's not just talking heads. So the moment it comes just a lot of talking, it doesn't work. But the moment that you really express what you're saying and people can see it, it doesn't matter what the language is, and people connect. That's what we found. That's what I've found.
Thank you. Rosette, especially for you, because I know downtown and uptown, those are two different languages, I know. So how are you guys doing that?
So selecting productions that cut across in terms of the stories that are relatable in spite of the language barrier. And then for the plays that are not in English, subtitles, we use subtitles for the rest of the audience to be able to watch them. And then specifically how we deal with engaging audiences is also when you're selecting a production and you know it's from a different language and a different country, you also have to put in mind who would actually attend it. So you specifically look out for an audience, or you take it to an audience that would attend it, but still encourage the local audience to be able to attend, because the point of having other productions is to explore and to allow the theater practitioners and even the Ugandan audience to experience a different type of theater.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Alex, you are frozen, but
one quick thing.
Yes.
Concerning the languages. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the translation part. We had a show some time ago done by John C.B. Okumu, and at the beginning, the show is about two characters who are speaking in Kikuyu language. Now, but the audience is mixed. So at the beginning of the show, these two characters who are a married couple speak in Kikuyu, and then there's a translator standing there, right there on stage, and he interprets what they're saying in English. After some time, after the first act or so, in fact, the first scene, the couple continues talking, and the translator melts away. The couple now speaks in English for the rest of the play, with the translator gone. The implication being that the audience should understand that this couple are actually still speaking in Kikuyu. They're still speaking the vernacular. So and the audience understood it actually. Yeah. Also, Rosette mentioned something about translations. Does she mean online? I mean, sorry, subtitles. Does that mean on the online productions? Because if it's physical theater, how would that work?
Subtitles within the performance. For instance, you have a projection And then as the
okay.
actor is acting, it's in English.
Oh, you use a bit of technology.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. We are over time, and I don't want us to be those Africans. So I'm gonna say thank you so much. If I'll give you a chance to just say some parting words if you can do 30 seconds, that would be ideal.
My parting words is that I would love this conversation to continue. We're having the Mitambo International Theatre Festival. I don't know how the International Online Festival and Aidah, the African Theatre Magazine can continue with the same panelists or even beyond. So I think as you said, it's not exhaustive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, I'm very happy with this conversation. Again, like Lloyd, I hope you can continue to do all these kinds of discussions. Also, I write. I'm an editor for the theatretimes.com. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's an online portal for theater news. And I would like to interview all of you individually so that you can get more into your stories, your past projects, what you're working on now, that kind of thing. If you go to the theatretimes.com, you can find my articles and others. So after this, I'll find a way to reach out to you, and we can get into this. We can do interviews for the Theatre Times. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Rosette?
I want to thank the panelists and our hosts for having us. And as Lloyd has said, we hope that this can continue. Even within our festivals, we can continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Makhaola?
Yes, no, thank you very much. I'm glad to have met all of you, and I hope to visit your countries, your respective countries. I hope that we continue to engage.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you all for being a part of this conversation. I've learned so much about the work that you are doing, and yes, we need to explore more of what you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Cassia. Are you coming back to join us? Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
I am here. Thank you so much.
I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to all of those of you that watching us, will be watching us, and all the other future tenses in other languages that I do not know. Thank you so much, and I do hope those conversations continues. Please watch us at the International Online Theatre Festival. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.